I won't introduce myself that much, also what's said here, and there is also some writing on it in the abstract. So I'll just go on. We call it the Childhood Health Activity and Motor Performance School Study, and I'll tell you later why this thing. Locally it's called the Swinborg project because that's where it's going on. Now, to introduce our problems, this is one of the things. Now, a lot of people end up like this, whereas we used to be like this. We have changed our environment and our way to do things the last 60, 70 years. Some people like to think that there's a genetic cause for this. I'm afraid not. At least there's not going to be an easy genetic fix, because up to today we have found more than 400 genes coding for body composition, which means we cannot make an easy genetic fix. So something else has to be done. This has been shown earlier today, and this is where the United States was in 2009 regarding obesity. The problem for the European countries are that we are just lagging 5–10 years behind. So this is what it will look like in Denmark, for example, in another 20 years probably, that more than 30% of the adults will be obese, and more than 20 to 30% of the children. What we also found out here is that this is probably best. Well, this is probably not true because this is self-reported. When we look at things, they're not as good as people report themselves. So the problem might be even bigger, even in Denmark. So, about the sports schools that I'm going to talk about. How did they start? It's going to be my first focus. What is it? Who participates? I'm going to do some results from our research on it, and then I have a few take-home messages for you. First of all, it's quite ironic actually, because sports schools in Denmark started not as something that was designed for reducing obesity or increasing health. It actually were started by Team Denmark, which is the professional sports association in Denmark that help and enable elite sport in Denmark. One of their goals is as many as possible going to the Olympics and winning as many medals as possible. They also have a good goal, I'll say. They help them during the time when they compete, but most important, making the transition back to normal life after they've been competing. This is quite important. And the third thing is talent protection. And that was why they started the sports schools, or rather the sport counties. Because what they did was they Act 25, they invite all counties in Denmark to be sports counties. And 25 counties agreed to be that. And by agreeing to be that, you have to start sports schools. You have to start at least one line from first grade till 9th grade with extra sport. And this is a map of Denmark, and we have 5 million inhabitants, but this is all the counties that has agreed and where they have started sports schools. And Swinborg down here is where we have concentrated our research, or we've done our research. Swinborg is different from all the other towns. You can see here, this is the schools. The difference is that they started from the bottom. They started from kindergarten to 4th grade, where nearly all other counties started with the oldest kids, making elite from the starter. We did it another way, or they did it another way. What I have here is the sports schools, and then 4 control schools were selected as matching schools, and that was what we suggested as researchers, because we needed somebody to, or some schools that we could compare to, and they had to be similar to the schools that were sports schools, in all other aspects of being sports schools. Now, sports schools is not just schools with more physical education or sport. It's schools where PE teachers are given extra education. All teachers get an extra 20 hours every year of education to keep them updated on how you train children. And all training of the children, or physical education, is age-related. When you talk about age-related training of children, you talk about that they're not sport-specific until they can be sport-specific. doesn't help to send a 6-year-old child to train soccer. He or she needs to train something else. He needs to train awareness of the body, needs to train just to move. So that was what they did. All training were age-related or maturity-related, which means that they trained the best possible way and they used best evidence for it. There were 6 sports schools as shown before, and as I said, not just extra PE, but at least 6 lessons a week or 270 minutes. There was one school who elected to do 300 minutes and 1 hour a day instead of 3 times 1.5 hours. But this was the minimum here. The school started in August 2008. We started, as I said, with kindergarten to 4th grade. And it was not just those 5 grades that were giving sport. Next year it was kindergarten to 5th grade, next year again kindergarten to 6th grade, and so on. So it's a continuing process that should include all students at the school at some time. We had, as I told you, 4 control schools, business as usual, 2 PE lessons per week, and it was included totally 1,200 children. This is not all the children, because when you do research, all children were giving extra sport, but the research that we were asked to do, we had to ask the parents of the children to participate, of course, to get ethical consent. And not all children and parents wanted to participate, but we had close to 90% at sports schools and 75% on the control schools. So they were comparable. Now, what's necessary for a sports school to function and to get things going? Now, of course, we had to have the accept of the parents and the children. The county had to have the accept. Schools and teachers are here very important. They have to have ownership to the project. They have to have ownership to the program. So they understood that. The idea actually came from the administration, something called, or part of the administration called Sports Study Svendborg. But they went to the schools and the PE teachers and asked them, what would you like to be a sports school? And 6 schools said, yes, we'd like to do that. And then they told the PE teachers, now you create the best program for training these children that you can. Don't think economy. We'll fix that afterwards. You create the best program at all. And that's what the PE teachers did. They went out, got the evidence for the best training, and created the program. So they own the program. It's the teacher, they own it actually. They feel they have ownership for it, which means they are very, very good at putting it through. Because they feel for it, it's their own, they own the property of it. They really feel for it, which is important. The last thing that is important is the politicians. They of course have to vote for the extra money. And they did. 28 out of 29, and 1 abstention, didn't vote, so it was all the way through, and we had everybody there agreeing to it was a good idea. Then came the research. Now, it started actually in fall of 2007, where we met, and they wanted us to evaluate what is this? What will come out from this? Will there be anything positive? The first thing they wanted to look at was, of course, because this was Team Denmark, they financed the first part of it. Will there be any talents here? Will this give us more people going to the Olympics, more sportsmen? So they actually financed the first part, but we got more money, so it also got to be something about health. I have 5 minutes, I guess. So research project were planned, and in August 2008, together with the sports schools, everything started. The main aim was to assess the present and future health of the extra physical education. This was what we did. This is 1,200 children going through this. Timeline here. September 2008, we did all these things to them. Blood pressure, facing blood samples, DEXA scans were performed here. We were out measuring and testing all the children. 5-6 weeks it takes to test 1,200 children. With 3 teams doing it, there were questionnaires, and then we had something called SMS track. All parents receive a text message every Sunday asking if their children at any pains, and how many times they have participated in sport, and what sport. So we know exactly how much sport they have participated outside school also. On the results, I will concentrate on the blood samples, the DEXA scans, and the anthropometry, and the sports participation. First of all, sports participation. What happens when you give extra sport? Well, if you look at leisure time sports participation per week, it's 4.1 times for each pupil at the sports schools and 1.7 at the control schools. And then you add what they do in school. So when you come to a total of 4.4 times a week for the sports schools and 2.7 for the control schools, it adds up to nearly double for the sports schools, which is quite an amount. Secondly, if you look at what happens to obesity, the sports school, we have the risk of getting obese. Only half the children got obese. And this is not using BMI. This is using DEXA scan. Using a DEXA scan, you can get the exact fat percentage for the child, and this way we can see how much it is, how big a difference. Because if we use BMI, we have an effect of 75%, not only 50%. So actually I could show you some better figures, but this is the correct 50%. Leisure time sports also shows that if your children are active in leisure time sport, they usually don't have a problem with obesity. That's not the children that have the problems. The good thing about school sport is that you reach the children that do not participate in leisure time sport. If you look at insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, then 2/3 of the children in sports school develop insulin resistance. And we have children this age, 8 to 11 or 7 to 11, that have got insulin resistance. That's the step before type 2 diabetes. Leisure time sports also reduces insulin and glucose and increases insulin sensitivity, which is also good. So both things work. And again, we reach the children that do not do sport in the leisure time. Now, what about the economy? Well, it has a price. Extra lessons cost, because this was not something that they put inside. It was extra lessons. Didn't do it on, and then didn't do any Danish or English or math. Just kept going with extra. So in Svendborg, the full price is 2 million euros per year for all schools. That's when they have implemented in all schools, and that's what they're going to do now. For the whole Denmark, it will be 200 million euros per year to do it. So, but what about savings? Well, the cost of type 2 diabetes in Denmark is 2 billion euros per year. The potential saving is 1 billion per year, so what are we waiting for? Right. The political question is, what are we waiting for? So, take-home messages. In childhood, it's possible to reduce the number of overweight and obese children, halve the risk of insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, but it requires schools that want to do it. They have to have ownership for this. Parents and children need to support their idea. They have to feel home at it. They have to feel good at it. With it, administration and politicians that are willing to find the money to start, because in the long run, this is going to be a saving for society. Okay, that was it. Thank you.